So a moment ago you mentioned the relationship between the climate crisis and the potential for nuclear conflict. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, when they think about climate change, they tend to think about some of the more specific short-term effects that this could have. Rising sea level, oceanfront property going underwater, flooding, that sort of thing. But the real problem with climate change is that this is going to make large sections of the planet essentially uninhabitable. When that happens, there's going to be terrible conflict. We're going to see forced migrations far greater than anything that we've seen in recent times. And the potential for conflict is particularly severe in a number of parts of the world that are armed with nuclear weapons. We're particularly concerned about South Asia. India and Pakistan share a watershed from the Indus River Valley, which is going to be depleted as climate change progresses. And hundreds of millions of people are going to be competing for what little water is left. Both these countries have nuclear weapons. And I think many people who look at the climate problem feel that this is, in fact, the biggest problem we face. This is going to lead to conflict and quite probably to nuclear conflict, and that's how climate change is really going to affect human civilization.
As I'm sure you know, the United States is a party to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which essentially imposes an obligation on member states, those that possess nuclear arsenals, to dismantle those arsenals over time and to work in good faith towards a nuclear-free world. As the state holding the largest nuclear arsenal, and one that is in fact in the process of modernizing its arsenal, don't you think that really, in order for us to address this problem, the problem of the risk of a nuclear conflict, whether or not it's related to the climate crisis, starts here at home in the United States?
Oh, absolutely. The United States has played an abysmal role on the nuclear weapons issue. Right now, at this moment, 130 nations are in the process of negotiating a new treaty to ban nuclear weapons. This is an historic development and the most important step towards nuclear abolition in the last 30 years. The United States, along with the other nuclear weapons countries, is boycotting this process and actively opposing it. And they were doing this under President Obama as well as under the Trump administration. So the United States really needs to reverse course 180 degrees on climate change from the current administration's policy, and on nuclear weapons, the policy going back essentially for the last 70 years. We need to be moving rapidly towards the elimination of nuclear weapons before these weapons are used. And we're not doing it. We're not planning to do it. And that's wrong.
Now, you're a medical doctor?
That's correct.
Historically, the scientific community has not been particularly engaged politically, at least at a public level, out in the streets doing what you're doing today. Do you sense that there's a real change in terms of the attitude of the scientific community towards political militancy?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the medical community has been advocating for the abolition of nuclear weapons and working very hard on this for generations. My organization won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1985 for this work. But I think there's been a huge mobilization of the medical community, the scientific community in the last 4 or 5 months in response to the anti-science prejudice of the current administration and the concern that scientific data is just not being taken into account. We have real, live world problems that need to be addressed based on the data, on what we know about the world. And we can't solve these problems if we ignored the data.
And how do you deal with the fact that we have an administration here that is essentially a denialist administration and seems to be quite determined to advance the interests of the fossil fuels industry by any and all means available?
I think it's going to be up to the American public to deal with this administration. We cannot let them impose on the American people and the world this insane energy policy which they're pursuing. This is a minority administration. They didn't win the popular vote. They do not have a mandate to destroy this planet, and we need to keep reminding ourselves and the administration of that fact. This election did not give them license to destroy the Earth.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you, Ira, and I wish you a good march.
Thanks. You too. Enjoy the day. See you.